Diego, why are you bouncing the ball in the house? I thought I told you to stop bouncing the ball in the house. Why do you do that? Do it one more time, and I'm going to take away your iPad for an entire week. Hi, Diego. I don't think playing basketball in the house is probably the best idea. I'll tell you what. Would you rather play basketball in the driveway, or I can hold on to your basketball for you for about a week?
I would like to play in the driveway.
Okay, I think you made a good choice there.
Hi, welcome back. I'm glad you've decided to join us for this third session, Setting Limits Through Thinking Words. We're going to be talking about boundaries and limits. Now, in your opinion, which one of the items listed on your notebook are not benefits from limits, fences, or walls?
We hope you've learned something from this exercise in setting limits for your children and how that's going to be beneficial as you're rearing them. As we always do, we have a verse, a proverb. Today's proverb is from Proverbs 12:18. Rash words are like sword thrusts, but the tongue of the wise brings healing. This means that when we say things in a rash manner, when we yell, when we scream and say things that it really doesn't benefit anything. And it's like if you were to take a sword and you're jabbing it and you're never hitting anything. But the tongue of the wise brings healing. You want to be a wise parent, and you want to bring healing to your child. Today, we also want to talk about the difference between lenient parents and strong parents. A lenient parent is one who is more of the laissez-faire. If you remember from our session a couple of weeks ago, laissez-faire allows the child to do kind of whatever they want to. The child sets the limits in their lives. A lenient parent, they may not admit it, but they actually want to be their child's friend or their buddy. And your child has friends. They have age-appropriate friends with which they can play and grow and have a relationship. They need a parent. A lot of people can be their friend, but only you can be their parent. And they need someone who is strong. A strong parent is not a drill sergeant. A strong parent is someone who has clearly defined rules and goals for their children. And he or she works with his children in order for them to achieve those goals. Do they come about immediately? No. It takes a lifetime to rear a child. A child of a lenient parent has difficulty controlling their feelings and emotions. They're the ones that cry a lot. They're the ones that yell a lot. They're the ones that really become very emotional. Children from strong parents learn to deal with their feelings in a positive way. They understand that it's not appropriate for them to cry all the time. A child from a parent that's very lenient sometimes has problems getting relationships that are satisfying, whereas a child from a strong parental relationship will develop strong relationships with others as well. A child from lenient parents lacks self-confidence, and that comes out in a myriad of different ways, as you might expect. Whereas a child that comes from strong parents is very self-confident. They're developing their confidence. They understand that they can do something and maybe fail, and it doesn't make them a failure. It just means that that's something that they don't do the next time on the way to their success. A child from a lenient parent is very difficult to teach because they just don't want to learn, or they They may think they already know what they need to know, whereas a child from a really strong parent understands there's many things out there they don't know and that they need to learn, and they have the structure for doing so. A child from a lenient parent tends to misbehave more than a child from a strong parent would. And this, I think, has to do with their own self-esteem. A child that comes from a strong parenting relationship understands that they have self-worth, where a child from a lenient parent relationship is looking for their own identity. A child from a lenient relationship remains dependent and irresponsible as adults. So we would be rearing an immature adult, whereas a child from strong parents grows up in a responsible way, becomes a responsible adult most of the time. Remember what we said, folks, this is most of the time. This doesn't happen every time, but it happens more times than not. So as you examine your own relationship with your children, make sure that you fall towards the stronger parenting as opposed to being a lenient parent.
Now we're going to look at two different scenarios. I want you to notice the fighting words and the thinking words used in each one of these scenarios. Daniel, you're done playing with your toys, so go put them up right now.
Okay.
Daniel, I told you to go put up your toys. If you don't go put up your toys, you know what's going to happen. Daniel, I really needed you to put up your toys when I asked you to do that. Would you like to put up your toys right now, or would you rather me keep them for a couple of days for you?
I think I'll put up the toys.
Now let's talk a little bit about thinking words versus fighting words. For many of us parents, setting limits means giving commands and backing up those limits with more commands, adding in some yelling, anger, and even threats. We think the louder we get and the more we repeat ourselves, the stronger the limits we're setting for them. The problem is that the children might obey our commands, but we're setting up our kids up for a fight against us. Here are some examples of common commands we probably have given our children. How would you change these commands into thinking words? Here's the first one. You put your coat on now. Let's go to the next one. Because I said put your boots on, that's why. It's snowing outside. And the last one, I'm trying to watch the football game. Be quiet. Now let's talk a little bit about what we call the threat cycle. But first, I have to admit that the temptation is so great to bark commands at our children to set limits to control the behavior. We do this because using threats doesn't make us feel like a little wimp when we cry or beg or plead them to obey us. Number two, threats do work sometimes. Now, love and logic parents spend a lot of time talking to their kids. They're asking questions, they're offering choices. They don't tell their kids what to do, but they put the responsibility of the decision making on the children themselves. As the children grow, parents don't tell them what the limits are. They set the limits by giving choices. Now, children tend to respond to commands and threats in two ways. We have passive aggressive and passive resistive. They do this in an attempt to gain back some control that they think they've lost because of the commands and threats. With passive aggressive, children comply to commands with the intent to deter future commands and maybe even a little revenge. They comply by doing a bad job or even causing some damage. This makes the parents think twice before giving another command. Let's look at an example of passive aggressive. Carissa, stop playing and bring me the iMac Mini right now. Now we're going to look at passive resistive. It's a little bit different than passive aggressive. Now kids comply, but through lots and lots of procrastination and excuses. They will comply to the command, but in their own time. Let's look at this example.
All music all the time.
Diego, can you bring me that iMac Mini please next to you?
I can't, I'm too busy.
Diego, stop playing and bring me that iMac Mini right now please.
Fine.
Now, thinking words and fighting words are quite different, and I'd like to take some time to discuss the two. Fighting words focus on you, your power, your control, and your authority. In contrast, thinking words focus on your child and their ability to choose and decide. The sentences used and the words used are also quite different. Fighting words will involve commands, prohibitions, and once again, statements of control. Now, with thinking words, the sentences will involve questions, yes statements, and provide your child with options. The outcome of the two is really different as well. With fighting words, you win, but your child loses. And because no one likes to lose, this will just continue the cycle of the power struggle. The outcome of thinking words will really result in a win-win for yourself and your child.
I want to quickly review two basic ideas of loving logic parenting. Number one, we must set firm and loving limits using enforceable statements without showing anger, lecturing, or even using threats. Now, number two, when a child causes a problem, the parent shows empathy through sadness and compassion and then lovingly hands the problem and its consequences back to the child. Now, love and logic parenting is a learning process for both parents and child. Parents must learn to retrain themselves to avoid lecturing and commands and offer limits with options. Parents make a strong team when they plan and are in agreement with one another. Children must also be more responsible to take risks, struggle, achieve, and learn from their experiences. Now, one more important idea in helping the success of your love and logic parenting, we must acknowledge and encourage our kids when they are successful in following the limits and options. I want to encourage you to start as soon as possible because this is a training process. And remember, every child is different. Mean what you say and say what you mean so you don't give mixed messages. Now, it's real important to be consistent in setting our limits and how we respond because kids actually need to test our limits so it can be a maturing process. Kids do not like love and logic. We are asking them to take more responsibility for their own actions and decisions. They would prefer that we go back to the old ways of us telling them what to do and saving them for themselves. If we are not firm and consistent, our limits will be crumbling walls. Now, our examples and our words play a major role in building good self-concept in our children so they can mature into responsible adults.